Industrial Revolution. Hope you're doing awesome. Hope you guys liked the first video. I certainly enjoyed making it, even though it took me like 4 hours and I'm still confused about YouTube and these other things. But I think you guys got me up to like 30 subscribers. Is that a lot? No, probably not. All right, well, I'm having fun with it. Again, hopefully you guys like the videos. Hopefully they're helpful. I'll do them as often as I can. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We'll try to keep it a little bit shorter than the last video. Famous last words, right? But we're going to go through the PowerPoint today, and we're going to talk about an upcoming assignment. So we'll get to that in a little bit. So last time we did this, I got a lot of requests, or a lot of not requests, but I asked you guys. One of the last questions was, what should Mr. D'Amico wear in his next video? Well, actually, no. I think the question was, what should I wear, a shirt and tie? Most of you said no. A couple of you had some weird responses, but no, be comfortable was the number one option. So that's why you see me here still in my regular t-shirt. I think I'm getting old because one of the comments I just didn't understand. Some of them I didn't understand. One was like, yeah, you should because it's the drip. I'm not really sure what that means, the drip. I got requests to wear, this is from you guys, I got a request to wear a Godzilla suit, and someone actually sent me the link for a Godzilla suit. So, maybe when we get to the next topic, I'll be teaching in a Godzilla suit. Someone said giant duck suit. I don't know what's with you guys and these crazy things, but somebody wanted me to wear a giant duck suit. I got a lot of requests for the avocado socks. I guess those are the favorites. Then I got a request. This is your word. Just wear only a chef's apron. Don't think that's going to happen. But, I think for now we're going to stick with the shirt, the no shirt and tie. We're going to stick with just a t-shirt. But keep those requests coming. They made me laugh. So thank you guys. All right. So, again, I hope everybody's doing really, really great. We have, what is today? Today is Monday night, so you guys will see this on Tuesday. So that means that we have 4 days left of instruction. Technically, Friday's a half day, so teachers might lighten up on assignments a little bit, and then you guys have off all of next week for spring break. So there'll be no, teachers might be able to assign projects, but I think for the most part, you guys will have the week off. As if this time at home hasn't been enough, now you're going to get to be at home with no schoolwork. So next week, you'll be off. You're not going to have any assignments from me, but you guys might have some from your other classes, and might be a good time to get caught up on some makeup work and whatever you guys want to do kind of as we wrap up the third marking period here. But so we have 4 days left. So what are our goals today? So we're going to do 2 things today. We are going to go over the rest of the PowerPoint. So we're going to talk about just some of the notes that you guys took today. We'll go over some of the, some of the questions you guys might have had. Some of the pictures, we'll go through it. I'll try to take, 10, 12, maybe 15 minutes at the most to kind of clarify, walk you through some things, make sure the whole PowerPoint is squared away, make sure you guys have a good understanding. And then the next thing we're going to do, the second thing, really why I'm making the video, is because we're going to start a really big assignment coming up. It's going to be worth a test grade, so it's a big one. I'm going to give you guys lots of time to do it. It's going to be document-based questions where there's a lot of skill-based learning. I'll get into it. I'll explain the whole thing, but it's going to take you 5 or 6 days. I'm going to break them down into little segments where you guys are going to do just a little bit each day, but it's going to be a test grade. So I wanted to make a video. I wanted to explain that to you guys, make sure you're really, really comfortable with it. But before we do that, we're going to go to the PowerPoint. I just want to kind of conclude on some of these topics. We did a pretty good amount of it last time, but let's go to the PowerPoint. Okay. How's here? Good. All right. I look great. Good. All right, everybody. So we're on Industrial Revolution. As we discussed, the Industrial Revolution was this awesome period of reform, of change, of progress, of efficiency, of just mass worldwide changes. I don't need to get into, the specifics again about, what it was about. But, it was basically society as a whole, right? Moving forward, everybody moving forward. And again, not really warfare, not overthrowing kings, but kind of people coming together collectively to try to better the world, better transportation and the energy sources used and trading and farming and everything that you could think of, manufacturing. Sure, there was some competition that came with it, right? It starts in England and it spreads to Germany and France, and eventually it comes overseas to America too. So there's countries, sure, that want to outsmart each other, that want to have the best technology, that want to win economically on a big scale, but it wasn't necessarily warfare. It was friendly competition, or not necessarily friendly, but economic competition. But it was everybody coming together as a whole, right? So let's see. Okay. So we talked about all these topics, guys. One thing I didn't mention last time is that I want to emphasize this too. Remember, I wish history was this like simple and cut and dry. But remember, all these different periods that we're looking at right now, we're here, right? We're on the Industrial Revolution. Realize that all these historical periods, or some of them at least, intertwine with each other, right? It's not necessarily just one happens and the other one ends, or one starts, it ends, and another one starts, and that ends, and the next period starts. We have to realize that most of these periods somewhat overlap with each other. They intermingle with each other. So it's not as cut and dry as we might want it to be, where it was like, oh, the Industrial Revolution started and then imperialism started. A lot of these, specifically the ones that are near each other, overlap a little bit. So I just wanted to, again, reemphasize that point. We always talk about that, right? How the Renaissance was going on while the Reformation was going on. And towards the end of the Renaissance and Reformation, the exploration started. It's not just like there's one period, right? And it's over, and the next one starts, right? History is not always that cut and dry. Like today, right now, what's today, March 30th, we're living through a crazy time, right? Think about 50 years from now, 100 years from now. You open up a history textbook, or as long as you're around when you're in your older age and your grandkids are in school, you open up a history textbook. It's going to be a lot of different topics that overlap each other that are going on right now. If we were to study 2020, what's going on in the world right now, in 50, again, 75 years, even further in the future than that, you're going to see a lot of different things going on at once. You'll definitely see something obviously like the coronavirus. We are living through a crazy time. This is going to be all over history books, and a time, I don't know what they're going to call it, but this is going to be a big topic, and this might overlap with, what do I talk about sometimes? I think that we're living through a different type of renaissance. I think right now in 2020, the early 2000s, we're living through a technological renaissance. So that technological renaissance might overlap with the coronavirus, might overlap with, remember the current event that we did recently when we talked about America's tension with the Middle East, specifically Iran recently. All these different things overlap. So my point is that realize that most of these different periods and times commingle. They're somewhat together with each other. They're happening simultaneously. Okay. Alrighty. So we talked about some of the positives. How jobs were created and wealth was, increasing throughout the nation. All different technology and efficiency. We talked about some of the negatives. We kind of worked on a lot of the negatives last week, talking about child work and even the long hours and the terrible conditions that they, these poor kids had to go through. So even pollution. I mean, a lot of this energy that was used wasn't necessarily what we call clean energy, not energy that's renewable. These are some of the things I'll get into a little bit later. But definitely a lot of negatives as well, which we went over with the Industrial Revolution. There's the do now we did. We talked about children and the tough conditions that they had to go through. And then we went over the population growth. Again, I'm just speeding through this stuff. So if you guys are ever curious about more of this, you could always go back to the last video. But remember, the population growth, right? This is exactly the answer you guys had. As there's more and more people, the demand for a lot of things, food and supplies and even furniture and clothing, everything goes up. So when the population goes up so fast, so quickly, we need a faster, larger, more efficient output of goods, of items, of food. So that's how population growth really contributed. We did child labor. We looked at the map a little bit. And yeah, you guys we're able to look at this map. You guys actually did a really good job answering these questions last time. Which countries still have child labor? A lot of you guys were able to find out, by looking at the legend on the bottom, by looking at the title, which countries still do have a decent amount, unfortunately, of child labor. We looked at this map last time. We saw it started in England. And we left off with the vocab. So let's go here. This is what you guys wrote down today on Monday. So just to touch on some of these things a little bit here. So the Industrial Revolution, it begins in Britain. Why? Here's your first question. What did Britain have that a lot of the other countries around the world did not have? You could have said a couple different things. You could have said coal, close to the surface, but what's that fancy vocab word that we discussed? That longer word. They had the blank, something you need to have the Industrial Revolution. You need this for financial success. Factors of production. So that's what Great Britain had a lot of. Now, guys, remember, this is a huge point here. Farming, making clothes, sewing, communication, everything. Almost every single thing before the Industrial Revolution was done how? Not by machine, but done by hand. Done by human beings, not controlling a machine, but knitting by hand, farming by hand. Yeah, sure, you had the power of horses or oxes or mules or even bulls sometimes, or cows to pull your plows and stuff like that. But realize that for as long as history's been around, it's unbelievable to me that most things were man-powered or powered by a horse or powered by some sort of an animal. So now instead of, this is what the slide says, right? Instead of being done by hand, we had a machine for almost everything. We're going to look at a lot of primary sources here from people at the time, people living through the Industrial Revolution, and they were just like taking everything in, and they are amazed. They're walking around factories. They're walking around Manchester, which is a very, very popular, prominent town in England, or city. And they're looking around and they're like, this is like the future. Like everything here is like made by machine. They're like, what? It's almost like as if we took like my grandparents or your grandparents and put them like in a school today. And they'd be like, what is all this stuff? What are all these computers in school? What is this smart board? What is all this great technology? And they're like amazed by it. So now everything, not everything, but most things are being done by machine. And how are these machines powered? Here is another question that you guys looked at too. All these new resources, right? It's not just powered by hand or powered by an animal. Now we're harnessing all these different things. We're using water. Water is not a new invention, quite obviously. It's not an invention at all, but now we're harnessing water. We're using the power of water and using turbines. We're using what happens when water gets really hot and you boil it. You ever watch a pot of pasta boil, right? You take the lid off, what happens? Well, that steam comes out. Now steam is used as a resource too, which is pretty cool. Coal is a huge one. Coal is such a valuable resource at this time. It runs almost all of these machines because it's cheap to get for the most part, even though it's really risky for these poor kids that are doing it. But it's cheap to get and it's efficient. It burns for a long period of time, even though it might pollute the air. Iron ore was made. Now rivers are used for transportation, new harbors. So these are just some of the beginnings of it. Up here to the right, name the invention. What's it called? Top right. It is a seed drill. It's weird that it took people so long to come up with this stuff. It's like when you look at inventions and it's like, oh, I could have came up with that. Duh. Well, this just basically drilled deep into the ground with this piece here, and it put the seeds deeper into the ground, which would make it so that it would, plant better, plant faster, plant more efficiently. Bottom right is what would be a seed drill today, obviously attached to a tractor, so things have gotten much, much more efficient. But that was a big one. That was an early 1700s invention. So resources today. What do we use today to power machines, to power, factories, to power cars? It's the same stuff. Some of it's the same. right? I mean, we use gas and petroleum for cars. We still use coal. We still use even natural gases are used. What are we moving more towards now in 2020? We hear go green all the time, go green. I mentioned them before, but what type of resources would they be? They call them the renewable. Renewable means that it basically can't run out and that it's really typically not bad for the environment. So this would be something like harnessing solar power. You ever see a solar panel in a house before? That's a great way to harness power, to take in energy and output it and use it for something else. So some houses are even powered just by the sunlight. So that's solar power. You could use wind power again with these big turbines. You could just harness the power of the wind. You could use something called hydropower. I don't really even fully know how it works, but it's harnessing the power of using water. So now we're slowly moving away from some of these resources. But again, coal is still really, really valuable. And these are all different things that were used during the Industrial Revolution, all which really made the world more efficient and a smaller place. Okay, smaller meaning not the world shrunk, right? I have a globe actually next to my bed here. I should get a little office in my bedroom here. See my globe. So it makes the world a smaller place. Not in the fact that the world shrunk, but that you can now connect the dots. You can go from point A to point B faster. And not only people could, but goods can. You could transport. So that's a big thing with the Industrial Revolution. Okay. Some pictures here for us. Oh boy. So this looks brutal. On the left, you have what a coal mine used to look like and who's working in those. It's young children, right? We asked this question, why were kids used so often during the Industrial Revolution? And adults not fitting in there. And if they do, they're going to be really, really uncomfortable, right? So the kids went deep into these mines, breathing in these fumes. I mean, the one on the left kind of looks like an adult, but they're smaller humans. They're kids and they have to dig through the cracks and, picture this. Look at this picture on the right. I mean, does that look like somewhere that's safe to be? Does that look like something that you would want to do? Maybe if you're like real adventurous, but I'm looking at that like, I don't want to be nothing. I don't want to be nowhere near that, right? It can collapse. The walls can cave in. You're breathing in smoke and the physical labor of it. I mean, the coal mines were a brutal place. Just terrible, hard work, a grueling process to get that coal out. Here's a look at coal mines. That's just coal on the left. Which, if somebody can tell me, why do we get coal on Christmas if we're bad? I don't know where that came from. Okay, thinking about it. So there's a coal mine on the right. That's more of a modern look at it. Cotton. So cotton was one of by far the biggest resources that made a lot of money, that drove a lot of the economy, especially in southeast the United States. Think of North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, the deeper South, even Georgia. Cotton was a huge raw material that the Americas had that they typically exported out, right? Import when you take in, export when you trade out. So cotton was a really, really big one. And this is kind of a silly picture. I literally just went on Google and searched up cotton field, but I just wanted to show you guys how big a cotton field typically is and what it looks like. Like, I think everybody pictures cotton and they just picture it like a cotton ball and they think like it just grows on a tree and you just take it and then, okay, here's cotton, like we can use it. No, actually picking cotton is a really, really, again, tough, grueling process. First off, look at the size of the field and you could clearly see the cotton is the white. But if we zoom in, that's what cotton looks like. There's thorns, there's sharp bushes. It's almost like a rose, where if you ever pick a rose, there's thorns on the side. You don't just get the rose. It's actually tough to get the rose. Well, cotton comes with seeds, and there's stems, and there's thorns, and it's not as simple as just picking that cotton off. So typically, people would pick this cotton, and they would have to go through the process by hand of pulling out the seeds, pulling out the stems, pulling out any pieces that were bad, throwing them out, and then putting them together into these big cotton bales, and then shipping them out. And think about, the millions of things we use for cotton. But that was the process that people had to go through. Now instead, I'll show you a picture a little bit later. Now there's a machine for this. It's called the cotton gin, invented by a guy named Eli Whitney. So he invents the cotton gin. It's just basically a machine you could put the stuff into and churn it out. So now there's machines again for everything. These are just some of the inventions. Again, you guys are going to wind up reading more about these, but these are, again, one invention led to another. It was one invention. It was like a snowball effect. It was like a avalanche. It was like a whatever, everything just coming down and one at a time, and then one leads to another, leads to another, leads to another, a chain reaction, right? So these are just some of the really big, significant inventions. And I think I have pictures. I'll show you the pictures instead of having you stare at that. So one on the left is a flying shuttle. Kind of looks like a piano. Flying shuttle was used to basically weave, to basically put thousands of pieces of yarn together. You could make, blankets out of it, clothing, rugs, curtains, bed linens, and anything that you could think of. But instead of doing things by hand again, that's what the flying shuttle did, and it was really quick. There was like foot pedals. It really looks like a piano a lot to me, but that was a really big one. The one on the right, called the Reaper, basically just a way, again, powered by horse, yes. But this part on the back, the machine was new. It basically was a way to gather wheat or to gather corn or to gather grain, any type of, anything that you would grow in a field. And it gathered it quickly instead of just picking by hand. So we go to the next one. Sewing machine, everybody's probably seen one before, but instead of now doing sewing by hand, not just sewing clothes, fixing holes or things, but putting products together. And then the telegraph. I always laugh when I look at this one. It's made about 1830 or 40, the telegraph, but that was the way people used to communicate with each other over long distances. Long, meaning like 10, 20, 30 miles. Who invented it? The telegraph uses a blank code. The answer is Morse code. A guy named Samuel Morse invented it in 1830, 1840. I just picture like how easy it is for us to pick up a phone now. Here's my phone here. And like FaceTime someone and screenshot things and text and send pictures and videos. That was the form of communication. That was like groundbreaking. It was like, oh my gosh, we could send like 3 dots in the line and Morse code to someone that's like over there, like without talking. Like pretty cool stuff, at least for that time period, right? There's the steam engine. You could watch all sorts of videos on how the steam engine works. It just uses water and power. That's one of the first telephones that wasn't invented until like the late 1800s, maybe like the 1870s, 1880s, something like that. That's what the first phone looked like. So as we progress forward with even communication, it's not just transportation and manufacturing, the Industrial Revolution, it's communication as well. There's the water frame. It uses water power to, this one particularly was to make, I think, some sort of linens. Again, linens were a big thing in terms of like a linen. What's a linen? It's like clothes or sheets or things like that. So that used water power. And this is the cotton gin I talked about earlier. You would dump the cotton in here. You would spin the wheel, and then it would pick out the seeds, the stems, and all the stuff that you didn't want, and it would push out the cotton on the other end. Okay, and this is the last part of the presentation here. So improvements in transportation. So again, the Industrial Revolution was changes with everything, right? But transportation was a huge one. Now Britain's roads are improving, not roads for cars. Who invented the first car? It's Henry Ford. Very good. That wasn't until, might have my year wrong here, early 1900s. So cars are not out yet, but now there's improved roads that people can walk on. People can bring their horse and their carriages. So now there's new roads going across Europe and eventually in America too. The new rocket, this part always cracks me up. A guy named George Stephenson makes something called the rocket. Here's a picture of it. Called the rocket. You guys probably just saw this in the last slide. It went about 20 miles an hour, 25 miles an hour. So not too fast, but for the 1800s, groundbreaking pace. You could see that it uses, this one would use coal or even sometimes water, and the steam would come out of the front. Meanwhile, today in 2020, you got some trains that can go like super speed trains. I forget what you even call those. High speed rails, they go like 200, 200. I mean, it's crazy how much progress we have, right? And it makes you think too, 200 years from now, are they going to look back on us and be like, that's all they had was trains that went 200 miles an hour? What a joke. That's so slow. Like they call that the high speed railway. Like, you got to think that history is about predicting the future too. Liverpool, Manchester, there was a line that went, you guys could see on the map, it's somewhat northwest England. You guys might even, if you follow soccer, you might have heard of Manchester, Manchester United, Liverpool. So Liverpool's actually where the Titanic launched from, I believe. But there was now a train line that connected these two places. So that was big. And then railroads. Railroads were like the MVP of the Industrial Revolution, connecting everything, creating jobs, boosting agriculture, connecting little cities to big farms. So that was a big one. And again, last point here, as we wrap up part one, is the Industrial Revolution brought rapid and unsettling changes, meaning it was quick, people weren't used to it. So just a lot of stuff to kind of get used to there. Okay. All right. Take a little break here. So if you guys have any questions at all about it, you can feel free anytime. Post on Teams, go on to email me, tweet at me. I've had people doing all sorts of communication. Text me on the Remind app. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, please let me know. I want you guys to be as comfortable as you can, on the topic. We're doing the best we can here. I miss you guys. I wish we could be in person doing this stuff, but it is what it is. So we'll carry on. We'll be okay. So I'm going to take a quick pause. That's the end of our PowerPoint for the whole chapter. I'm going to explain to you the project that we're going to be doing going forward. Okay. So I'll be right back. Okay, guys, I am back. And I realized that first part was 27 minutes. So I am doing a terrible job of doing this quickly. I just get really into it. Sorry, guys. Anyway, this is probably the most important part here. So now I'm going to go over what we're going to be doing for the next probably 5 or 6 days or so. And again, I want to emphasize a couple things, so listen really carefully. If you guys want to, feel free. Go back and replay this part of the video. You can pause it. That's the beauty of the online learning thing. You can always pause. You can go back. You can reread. You can you could always reread, but you can watch this as many times as you want to. So my goal here is to get you guys really, really prepared for this assignment, to make sure that you're okay with it, to make sure that you're comfortable with it, that you understand it. Ultimately, I want to see you guys all do really, really well on it. I know you're very capable of it. We've been doing primary sources all year. So I think you guys are going to be in really good shape with it. We're going to take one document at a time, one thing at a time. Try not to be overwhelmed at all. And like I said, I'll do the best I can to explain everything to you. Okay, so overall, this is what the assignment looks like, and it's a big document, but we're going to break it down into bite-sized pieces each day. So it's all different document-based questions about relating to what we're learning is the Industrial Revolution. So I think there's 12 of them here. 11 of them, I'm almost positive, 11 of them are what we've been over all year. What do you call a source that is from the time under study? Directly from the Industrial Revolution, it's called a primary source. So 11 of these will be primary documents, meaning they're phenomenal to study because they're eyewitness accounts. These are people that were genuinely there witnessing it, right? I mean, again, I hate to bring up the coronavirus again, but 200 years from now, are you going to want to, our kids and our people, are they going to want to read a story just randomly about the coronavirus that gives some facts, gives some information, or are they going to want to read something from, somebody's mouth that was alive during it? Are they going to want to hear my story, your story, someone's direct words who lived through it? That's the best way to study history. And hopefully this gives you perspective. There's going to be people that are very in favor of the Industrial Revolution, people that are very against it in some ways. So I hope this gives you a lot of perspective too. But what is a primary source? It could be anything from a map. It could be a graph. It could be a document. It could be a story, an excerpt, a quote. It could be a political cartoon. There's so many different types of primary sources. So our goal here is we're going to do 2 per day. Okay, so bear with me here. There's a total of 12 sources. Okay, 12 different sources that we're going to go through, some pictures, some charts, some graphs. You're going to be responsible to analyze and read and answer questions ultimately for 2 sources each day. So, for example, today is Monday. Tomorrow, when you get assigned, this assigned to you will be Tuesday. You're going to do sources 1 and 2. They'll be due by midnight of tomorrow. Okay, 2 on Wednesday, 2 Thursday, 2 Friday. Then we go on spring break. Okay, I'm not going to assign anything over spring break. We'll come back from spring break. You'll have 2 more that Monday, 2 more that Tuesday. But again, take it slow, take it easy. We'll do 1 document at a time here, 2 per day, but we'll just take it slow. We'll do 1 at a time. Okay. One more really important thing before I take you through the documents. And I want you to replay this. I want you to think about this. This is so important. I really appreciate that you guys get very into your work and you want to be spot on. You want your answers to be perfect. You want your answers to be correct. Mr. D'Amico, is this right? Is this right? Realize that for primary sources, some of these are challenging to read. And I totally understand that. I am here for you. If you have any questions, you have the internet, you have me, you have all the resources that you need. All I'm asking you on this assignment to get full credit is that you try your best. Okay? Do the best that you possibly can. Some skills that we've worked on, right? As you're going through some of these documents, some of these sources, read it twice if you need to. Read it 3 times if you need to. Look up words that you might not understand. You could actually right-click, I'm almost positive, on a Microsoft Word document. Say you don't know the word, I don't know, something as simple, struggle. You could literally right-click it and go to synonyms, and it'll give you words that are similar to it. They're synonyms. You can, there's a lot of different skills and ways that you can try to figure out what's going on in some of these documents. But read, put yourself in these people's shoes. This guy, Frederick Engels, put yourself in his shoes as you're reading it. Most importantly, take your time and just try your best. Okay. With these questions, guys, they're open-ended for the most part. Why do you think people choose to live? There's not going to be one right answer, one wrong answer. You guys know that. We just want to see you critically thinking, putting your best effort into it, analyzing it, thinking deeply, and explaining yourself. Okay. 1 or 2 words is not going to be appropriate, right? It should be a solid, thoughtful, creative, detailed sentence or 2, especially for this one, right? There's only 2 questions that go with this document, so tomorrow you're only going to be answering a total of 5 questions. Just try your best. It's a test grade, so it's a big one. What am I sitting here looking for when I'm grading now? I'm looking for effort. I'm looking to see that this proof that you read the document, that you understand it at least a little bit. You don't have to understand every single word of it. Some of these documents are more sophisticated, more complex, more complicated than the others, but just try your best, read the instructions, and these will be up every single day on forums. So each morning when you log on, I'll get them up there by 7 or 8. You'll have that specific day's sources up there. Okay. And we'll combine all of them into a big grade, a big test grade. So you're going to do fine. Be confident, believe in yourself. And I'm here for you. And I put a bunch of supplemental pictures here for you guys. So I know a lot of us, including myself, are visual learners. You'd like to be able to see the things. So that's just some advice for you going forward. Okay. So again, our objective is to gain a better understanding of the Industrial Revolution by reading primary and secondary sources, closely analyze the passages, quotes, excerpts, cartoons, charts, graphs, and respond to the questions. So let's go through these here. So source 1, and this is a good time if you want each day when you do this, refer back to the video and you can replay my discussion with you about source 1, about source 2, and so on. So source 1 is called Condition of the Working Class in England. It's by a guy named Frederick Engels in 1845. He was a German, and he wound up staying in a place called Manchester, which is in England. He goes there for 2 years. I believe it's 1842 to 1844, 2 or 3 years. He goes and sees the way that things are. He looks at the factories. He sees all the different things around him. He's basically taking these things in, and then he writes a book about it, and he calls it Condition of the Working Class in England. He first wrote it, he was German, he first wrote it in German, eventually translated it. So it's basically a primary source of this man who becomes really popular. writing basically about what is he seeing. These pictures here, these drawings, show you some of what he saw: the slums, the cities, the tough working conditions in London. The streets are unpaved, the ventilation is poor. So those are some of the things that he's seeing. The mortality rate, and he's got some strong arguments here. So his perspective, you'll see, is basically right through his eyes. What did he see? Okay, so that's going to be source one. You'll answer these questions here. What's a typical town like? Provide 5 details about what a typical English town was like. And then why do you think people still chose to live in these towns? Do you think people still live this way? Okay. So that is source one. Source two. This is called Cheap Clothing by a guy named John Leach. It's a political cartoon. It's from a magazine, a British magazine called the Punch magazine. And it's a political cartoon called Cheap Clothing. Bubbles of the year, cheap clothing. Your job here is to look at the political cartoon and to try to figure out what's the message, right? Political cartoons are there to send us messages. There's always little things in political cartoons that they're called symbolism, right? We went over this. They're little things that might try to send a message. And usually political cartoons are very biased. What does bias mean? Bias means it's very one-sided, right? It's trying to get you to believe something. It's trying to get you either to like the Industrial Revolution and the factory owners, or to dislike them and not support them. It's trying to make you feel some sort of a way, some way. So your job here is to look at the title, which we already looked at, Cheap Clothing, and to look at the cartoon, describe the activities going on, name 2 or 3 of them. Describe what you think the message is in the cartoon, and then come up with your own title and describe why you chose the title. So let's look at all the little things. I don't want to give too much away here, but that's what you're going to do for source 2. Okay, source 3. This is by a guy named Thomas Carlyle in 1858. It's called The Signs of the Times. Again, this is just a first-hand source of somebody who was viewing the Industrial Revolution and seeing it through his own eyes and making comments and observing and going to factories. And he was just absolutely amazed by what he saw. So you're going to answer some questions based off of what Thomas Carlyle saw. What were his thoughts? For all, this part might trip some people up, so I'm going to help you with it because it's a question. For all earthly and for some unearthly purposes, we have machines and mechanic furtherances. So he's saying, what is he saying? Try to figure that out. Basically, for every purpose, for things that we need, and we have machines for things that we really need machines for, earthly, and unearthly, things that we would never think we would need a machine for. He's saying we basically have machines for everything now, for mincing cabbages, for magnetic sleep. And he's just commenting, and he's just amazed by the time. So you're going to answer some questions about this document specifically. Okay, section 4, source 4. These are some charts, some line graphs actually, about they call selected factors. So this is like production in Britain. So you already know what I'm going to tell you. Look at the titles. Look at the years. Look at each one, right? You have line graph A, which is about raw cotton. So just cotton, how much cotton overall is being consumed over the years in millions of pounds. Then you have B, which is the output of coal, how much coal is being produced and used. And then how many miles of railroads being laid across the years. It starts around the 1850s for this one. So those are just some questions that you'll answer using the line graphs. You guys have definitely done these in math. You've done them in history before. So those are called the selected factors. Okay. Next up, the philosophy of manufacturers. Andrew, it rhymes with pure. I guess. Andrew Pure. Okay. This is the guy again. You can obviously see by the document, he's saying he's visited many factories in Manchester and the surrounding areas. He's got a very different view than some of the other people do about the Industrial Revolution. So I'm not going to give too much away, but it's 2 paragraphs on the kids and give you a little hint here. He's saying the children seem to be always, or the Children seem to be always cheerful and alert, taking great pleasure in using their muscles. You can already see what type of perspective Andrew had here. And you have a little chart here that shows you the age of a lot of the people that were working. You could see the difference in males and females and the ages. Look how little people worked, or the small amount of people that worked, in the cotton mills that were older. And this is, again, a picture of what it looked like to work in the coal mills. So for source 5, that's what you guys will be doing and taking care of there. Okay, almost halfway through here. So this is my favorite one. I love this one. This is a conversation, a real conversation. You could look at the picture on the top right there of a kid named Joseph Hebergum talking to a man named Sadler. That's his last name, Sadler. They're having a one-on-one conversation about what this poor child went through. And this is not from this is not a story or a fiction. This is literally a conversation between these two people about what this kid Joseph was going through and the things that he saw his brother die in front of him in a factory. So this is a real conversation. Again, it's his testimony. And it makes me think, right? Like, we all think our lives are tough right now, going through this corona scare, and it's terrible, and we have to be stuck at home. It's the worst. And I know that it's very serious, but I compare that to what this poor kid's life was like every day, and it kind of makes me grateful for things I have. So this is a really, really good one. It's one of my favorite sources. So you'll answer the questions below for this one. Make an inference. Who do you think Michael Sadler was? So something called the Sadler Committee, as you see. So that should be a hint. After you read it, you should be able to hopefully understand, make an inference, make an educated guess on who you think he was. What details have you gained about the Industrial Revolution from the Sadler Report? And then what, if this was happening today, what do you think would happen? Right? I always like to compare it to today. Okay, source 7. This is the only one that is a secondary source. This one's really simple. It's a little story that tells you about textile production. We've talked a lot about textiles, what they are, the spinning jenny, the water frame, the textile industry in England. This is just a relatively straightforward secondary source, meaning it's just a story, it's an explanation, it tells you, it gives you some solid background information. So you'll read that, answer these questions, basically explain the 2 steps to producing textiles. What are the 2 basic things? Who often worked in textile factories, which you'll find right in the passage, and which 2 inventions revolutionized the textile industry. I think I've been talking about them the whole time, so that one should be pretty straightforward, okay? Source 8. Another political cartoon. This one was in color. Why was it in color? Because this was a little bit more recent. This was 108 years ago. Math check there. This was about a man, I'm sure we've heard of him, John D. Rockefeller, okay? He had a monopoly, a great monopoly, which we'll get into. He's one of the richest men in history. He basically takes over the oil refinery, just like a guy named Andrew Carnegie took over the steel industry. A guy named J.P. Morgan, I'm sure you've heard of, took over the bank industry. But this is a little bit later, and a lot of people believe that the Industrial Revolution led to these things called monopolies, where 1 or 2 people or a small group of people have total control over everything, right? So some people might look at that as a positive. I would say the majority of people look at monopolies as not a good thing, but this is about Rockefeller, one of the richest men. It's a political cartoon about him, a little bit after what you would say are the years of the Industrial Revolution, as you see 1912, but definitely still relatable to the topic. So this one is really straightforward. 3 things you specifically see in the cartoon and what you think it represents. For example, you can say, I notice there's smoke in the background coming out of the building. That represents blank. What do we think these are? What do we think this thing could be? Who are these people underneath here? What is he wearing? Any use of symbolism, very open-ended, very straightforward. And then you're going to summarize the cartoon in 1 sentence. Okay, number 9. Again, pretty straightforward. U.S. railroad construction. You're going to look at the year, starting in 1860. What started in 1861? Next year. Lasting until 1865 is the Civil War. Very good. That might help you with one of your questions here. But you're looking at railroad growth, the number of miles laid. Look at the title. Look at the graph. Take your time with it. That one doesn't need too much explanation, hopefully. Okay, 3 more. 10, I love this one too. This is the cotton gin. I told you how revolutionary it was, how amazing the cotton gin was. And you're going to see here that slavery was also somewhat intertwined with the Industrial Revolution. Again, slaves used to typically be the ones in the American South, at least, and sometimes in some different countries as well, who would pick the cotton. They would have to go through the terrible, grueling, miserable process of doing it. Now we have machines to do so. We have the cotton gin. So one of your questions is, explain how the cotton gin works, trying to figure it out by looking at the different instructions up top. You can see the cotton balls go in here and the clean cotton comes out this side. How does it happen? What's the process? Then we're going to look at the output of cotton and how many bales of cotton were produced each year in the United States, only in the United States, the leading producer of cotton at the time, and probably still. And then how many slaves also were in the U.S. Now, pay attention to this. This is insane. That yellow cotton bale, I guess you see, they call it a cotton bale, a bale of cotton. Each single one you see is 200,000 bales of cotton. What's a bale of cotton? Well, I Googled what it looked like if I could find it. One cotton bale, these things, hopefully you can see these pictures, they are huge. Almost looks like a big giant rolled up candy. The size of these things, I mean, I'm trying to find one that might be next to like a person. That's a square bale, a rectangle bale. I mean, that thing would tower over me in an open field. That right there is one bale of cotton. And as you see here, each one of these represents 200,000 bales, 200,000 of these of cotton. So it's insane. Why was that possible? Industrial Revolution, cotton gin, Eli Whitney. And of course, slave labor, unfortunately. Last 2, guys. This one is a complex one. It's called the Communist Manifesto. It's by these 2 guys, Engels, who we looked at earlier, and a guy named Karl Marx, who becomes really, really famous for the Communist Manifesto, for his takes on the economy. This one might be a little challenging, so take your time with it, but I'll give you a general overview. These 2 here were against capitalism. They were against the idea that factories, that business owners should be able to kind of do whatever they want to do in terms of business and not have many restrictions. These people felt that communism, or a form of socialism, would be better, in which the government has a little bit more power and they restrict companies and people. And there's not necessarily rich and poor. They want people to generally be around the same. So they're somewhat against what's going on during the Industrial Revolution. As we see a gap between the rich and the poor, they're somewhat against it. They think capitalism is bad and that this thing called communism is good. So you're going to read this one, take your time, answer the questions. If you need help with these, certainly reach out and let me know. And lastly, The Wealth of Nations. This is Adam Smith. Adam Smith is the opposite of Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. He thinks, Adam Smith, that capitalism is a good thing and that communism, socialism is a bad thing, okay? And he goes on and on about it in his book called The Wealth of Nations. It's really good, coincidentally written in 1776. What also happened in 1776? America got its independence. Well, at least they declared it. So you're going to answer these questions. So if you need help, let me go back to one more thing. If you really are confused about socialism or about capitalism and the differences, you can pause. You could always look them up, or you could reach out, ask questions. Take a look at this chart. I'll try to get myself in the corner here. It's fine. You guys can look at some of these. You can see capitalism on the left, socialism on the right. You can read. I'm not going to get too much into this lesson for another day. But check these out if you need the help. You can pause the video, at that point, whenever you can just look this up, but that should help you. The people that wrote document 11, source 11, they support this capitalism. People, or the guy, Adam Smith, that wrote document 12. I'm sorry, I actually got that mixed up. The guy who wrote document 12, Adam Smith, sorry, I'm confusing you. He supports capitalism. So 12 is the one on the left. Adam Smith supports capitalism. The one on the right, socialism, that is more supported by Engels and by Marx. That's on the right. So again, 11 is here. They support socialism. 12 is capitalism. Okay. So guys, that is going to be it here for this video. I know it was long. I really, really hope it's helpful to you guys. And, again, I can't tell you guys enough how much I appreciate you and appreciate you guys listening and learning. And like I said this last time, taking this as an opportunity to learn. I miss you guys a lot. It's not like school. It's not the same, but I'm doing everything I can to try to make it successful and try to keep you guys engaged and interested. So if you have requests too, if you have an idea for something cool you want to do with the class, let me know. Let us know. I'd be happy to take some requests. But again, just to wrap up with this assignment, it's going to take us a couple days. Everything will be on the computer. Everything will be online. Actually, you know what? I said that was my last thing I'm going to do. But I promise this is it. Here are the due dates. Right here. So this will be posted everywhere. You could screenshot this. You could pause it here. You could take a picture of it. These are all of our due dates. Okay, so don't be overwhelmed. Let's take one day at a time. I'm here for you. You're going to do 2 sources per day and submit the questions on Teams, which is going to be a form each day. So tomorrow, for example, you're doing sources 1 and 2 and the questions. Wednesday, you'll do 3, 4, and so on and so forth. And then we'll have a nice little break in here, about 10 days off. And then we'll complete this activity when we come back, as we're wrapping up already with the Industrial Revolution. Okay. So that's it, guys. I really hope you stay well. Hope you guys are staying sane and, trying to enjoy this the best you guys can. I miss you guys. I love you guys. I hope everything is going smoothly. And like I said, work hard with this assignment. Try your best. And we're here for you every step of the way. So good luck, and I will see you guys next time.